people turn to drugs or alcohol, it's for a purpose that's self-medicating, we're all used to hearing. But with individuals that are suffering from social anxiety, there's always what they call a comorbid. So there's always another thing happening.
Comorbid?
Comorbid, co-occurring. So alcohol abuse and drug addiction or substance abuse often accompany that in 45% of people suffering because they're trying to dull those feelings. And so it's not uncommon for people with social anxiety to have a substance abuse issue like Andy did, because it made him feel different.
Sure.
Even though he was taking medications as well, it just didn't do enough. Also, individuals with social anxiety most commonly suffer from depression. So there's always going to be a few occurring issues along with it, which is why Jeff's talking about when someone's suffering, it's easy as a clinician to say, oh, they're depressed, oh, they have anxiety. It's really searching for what's really causing some of that and digging deeper, and that takes time and that takes a relationship, and that's key to really getting at what's going on.
So how would it present? How would a viewer, how would a parent, how would a person that's watching say, this might be something that's going on with me?
Well, and Jeff mentioned it earlier, people are shy, but when someone is shy to the point where they're not engaging in life, where they're not there isn't friendships that are happening, sort of normal things you would expect your son or daughter to do, or for those in high school and middle school, you see it a little bit differently because those are all transitions in it. Transition times, there's a lot of things that are happening, which is why Jeff was talking about high school. So oftentimes I hear from parents their son or daughter can't walk into a classroom. They miss all the oral reports because they can't get up in front of the class. They can't participate in the clubs because there's, performance issues. The fear of being judged is at the heart of this, and it just permeates, as Jeff said, one's whole being, and it completely incapacitates them.
So what kind of advice would you give to somebody who says, well, that sounds familiar to me?
Well, that's one of the things that we wanted to establish on our in our foundation, and we created a website, which is AKFSA.org.
Which we will show on the screen.
Great. And we urge people that have any kind of concerns about social anxiety, whether they're a person suffering from social anxiety, or they think they're suffering from social anxiety, or they're a friend or relative or parent of somebody suffering from social anxiety, or someone in the mental health community that wants to learn more about it, we urge them to come to our website and find out. We have resources available to people, and we have information about just educating people about social anxiety is part of our mission.
So do you feel that clinicians are becoming more familiar with the possibility of that, with the possible diagnosis?
Absolutely. I think there's two answers to that. The foundation provides resources to all professionals as well as individuals.
So there's two different components.
There's three pages of clear stuff that each person wants to get for themselves, and most importantly, this is the only foundation of its kind. There isn't any other social anxiety foundation like this providing information solely on these issues. You can download a form that's for children, adolescents, or adults. You can take it to your pediatrician, you can take it to your internist, and they will help you find clinicians. Clinicians are available now. It's just about really getting at what's going on and being clear about that. AKFSA.org is the website. It has articles. There isn't anything you cannot find, just to educate yourself and as a professional as well.
And this is a national foundation.
Yes.
And do you have collaborations?
Absolutely. That's probably the most exciting thing. Do you want to start us off, or?
Yes, we just finished talking with the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, and we're going to partner with them very shortly. And we feel it's important because they're a well-established national foundation dedicated, obviously, to anxiety and depression. We are hoping that they will take this subset of anxiety, social anxiety, and put it on their website and make it a national issue for them as well. So we're going to combine our resources and hopefully get going even faster than we already have.
There's key things that are going to be occurring, especially in the year 2014, with community education, with webinars for families, for sufferers, webinars for professionals at no cost to the general public, which is so important when you're rolling out information.
And this will be nationally?
It will be available nationally. They're a national organization. They do have information on social anxiety within their site right now, but because we're partnering on these special initiatives, it will help them focus more attention on those issues. They have great professionals within the organization, their network that can provide services across the nation, so that there are resources available to people. This is very, very treatable.
So let's go back to the mission. Let's clarify for our viewers what the mission is.
Our mission at the Andrew Kukas Foundation for Social Anxiety is to educate mental health professionals and the general public and sufferers of social anxiety, and to provide resources for them.
Well, that's a lot to educate the professional community and the general community.
We have our hands full.
That's significant. That's why this partnership seems to make a lot of
sense.
sense.
And we've had some very good partners here in the state of Michigan doing community events. We've had that in Oakland County through Oakland County Community Mental Health. Macomb County Community Mental Health has had community events. We've had partners with Jewish Family Service Agency and Easter Seals. Lots of organizations out there are supporting the need to educate the public in key mental health issues, especially because this affects children, adolescents, and adults.
Let's talk about that for a minute, how it does affect those three groups.
It's different as one might expect. So it's an unusual circumstance that may happen with young children called selective mutism, and that's where they're talking at home with their family perfectly fine, but in the school setting they're not engaging at all. They're never raising their hand, they're never talking. Other children wind up talking for them. And so that is a version of early social anxiety.
That's interesting.
If it's left untreated, that morphs and changes and gets more serious as they get older.
So a teacher needs to recognize that.
Absolutely. And teachers are on the front line, as are pediatricians and parents. So if we can really get the basic out there in terms of what it is. So you know someone's shy and that's okay, but when it prevents them from engaging in things, natural things in life, where even at a family event they're uncomfortable, you know there's other things going on. When they're alone in their room 90% of the time, and we know teenagers are going to do that anyway, but there's differences in there because a lot of the time they're doing other things. When those other things aren't happening, you need to kind of look deeper.
And then adults.
Adults often find it, and especially when the economy changed, there was a lot of issues with adults that had been suffering from social anxiety in the workplace, sort of had a niche that they were okay in. But then as the economy hit and they had to go back and interview again, no.
And we saw a lot of that transition. Would you, is there any correlation between suicide and social anxiety?
You know, it's depression, suicide, all of these illnesses that we're talking about, when they are untreated, when the individual feels that they are hopeless, and this is not a hopeless situation. Those depressive feelings set in when they're using substance abuse as a resource instead of a good, you know, medical personnel and a good therapist. Yeah, suicide is a potential out there, and you want to be vigilant about that.
We're seeing a real increase and really focusing a lot in Oakland County on suicide awareness and prevention.
That's why education and awareness are the only two pieces that are going to prevent those things from happening.
Well, when you say it's not helpless, what are some of the treatments?
The most common treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's very short term typically, And there's many individuals that are skilled in this therapy. You can ask, you can look on our website, the
I saw it on your
association.
website. I didn't quite understand it.
You know, it's one of those things where the individual is engaged in thinking about their thoughts and feelings and how they are affecting their actions. So oftentimes when you bring that up in a therapy situation, that's great. But then cognitive behavioral therapy also has a practice component, and there's homework. So that you're going out and doing things that are uncomfortable for you, finding that what you think is going to happen doesn't always happen, and taking that new information and letting that help you operate in a different way. Doesn't mean that it goes away completely, but it brings the individual to a better understanding of their circumstance, and they can function more easily in the daily things that life brings on.
So that was not an option for Andy? He didn't have that kind of therapy?
It was different.
It was different.
Yeah.
By the time he found it,
Yeah.
it really wasn't going to work for him. He refused it, actually. That's the problem with social anxiety, is that many people don't even realize they have it, and many people that have it can live with it. It lives on a spectrum. And if you have a mild social anxiety problem that doesn't affect the way you live your life, then you're probably okay. But when you reach the point where it's affecting your life, where you're not doing things because of your social anxiety, you're not interviewing.
Relationships.
You're not in relationships. You're not taking certain jobs where you might have to get up and make a speech in front of a group. When it's affecting the way you conduct your life, then it becomes a problem. And many people, even when they realize it, that they have these problems, will not acknowledge it or seek help. For instance, Andy signed up for a social anxiety meeting where people were going to talk about social anxiety. He came to the meeting and no one showed up. So
Was that in California or is that in
it was in California.
And that's not
So-
uncommon. It's a disease of avoidance. So if you want to avoid it, that the fact of getting people to a meeting would be highly unusual. I can't even fathom
But
how that
what
was
a-
gonna, yeah.
depressing to
Oh,
fight,
yeah.
to have the courage to go,
And there's
to
no one
seek it
else.
out, and there's no one.
Right, right.
Right. People that come to our website, for instance, most of the time will not leave their names. We send them information without knowing their names. That's fine. We don't care. But it's just
Confidential anyway.
interesting
right.
that most want to stay anonymous.
Well, I'm really struck by the fact that the name does sound a lot less serious when you say, oh, you know, I have some trouble when I'm in a social situation.
Right. But it's, you know, I think where you're seeing a lot more of this, especially is on college campuses, and the counseling and psychological services are seeing much more individuals coming in with social anxiety than they did with depression. It's overtaking it, and it's a key group that we want to make a difference with.
Well, Lori, let's just close with a little bit about the partners that you have.
Our key partner for the 2014 year is the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. They're going to do some national programming that's going to be available to the public. At our website, akfsa.org, you'll be able to find that as well, links to these programs. We have a plethora of resources there right now before we even get to 2014, so there's lots
It's a great
available.
website. I've looked at it.
And it's always being refreshed and changed, so there's tons of information for people to access and get either the information they need, the help they need, or the education they need.
And I know in Oakland County we have a wonderful community mental health agency,
We do
so
indeed.
there are a lot of resources. If any of the things we've talked about today seem to strike a note of familiarity with you about yourself or someone that you love, there are options available. We would encourage you to go to the Andrew Kukas Foundation website, and we have the website on the screen as well as a phone number. And there are also options available through our community mental health and Common Ground. We have a lot of wonderful resources in Oakland County. So thank you for coming and sharing your story
Thank you.
and letting everybody know about this illness, and that it's hopeful that now, because of some of the work that you've done, you've explored options for people, and that's very
Absolutely.
exciting for professionals as well. That's something we run into is professionals needing training. So now there's an option for them. I usually close my show with an environmental tip, and today I'm going to remind you that when you fertilize your lawn, the appropriate